This episode is called Seed Deals, How to Grow from Startup to Venture Capital. And before we jump in and talk about seed deals, let's articulate the bigger picture. So we start with a startup. And specifically, what's this startup look like? Well, a startup can be lots of different types of companies, but for purposes of this particular conversation, for purposes of this particular episode and these particular concepts, we're focusing in and we're honing in on a specific type of startup. We're talking about a company which is product-based, which is probably built around some kind of technology or biotechnology, which probably itself ties back to some sort of intellectual property at its very foundation. The whole point is, this is a company, because it works with a product and it's creating and building a product that can scale very easily once it gets through that R&D stage. The R&D stage is hard. It's hard to build something like this that works and that people want to buy. But once you do, the incremental cost associated with building the next gen products and pushing them out in increasing numbers is small. And as a consequence, these companies scale very nicely. And that's the attraction. Nothing wrong with a services company. Law firms are service companies, dry cleaners, hair salons, most of America is comprised of service companies. But those aren't the sort of startups that we're focused on in particular in this particular episode. So that's our startup. Now, whenever we do something, we want to start with the end in mind, or start up with the end in mind. And what's the end? Well, the end is going to be something called M&A, which stands for mergers and acquisitions. This is the exit. This is sometimes called the liquidity event. Now, sometimes a startup achieves exit through something called an initial public offering, which is an IPO. And that's not so much an exit as it is a transformational event. What happens with an IPO is you register your shares publicly, you can sell them publicly, and at some point after that fact, the original founders have the opportunity to sell their original shares to new investors, and as a consequence, that's when they can get liquid. That's their exit. But for virtually every startup, save for the small fraction which do go public, the exit event, the moment of monetization, comes through M&A. Now, what happens between startup, the beginning, and M&A, the end? Well, during this stage here, you've got venture capital. There's a lot of attention paid to venture capital because it's sexy and it's fun and it's big. And if a company has reached a point where it is attracting and landing venture capital, it's doing well. It's got real legs. It's built something that institutional investors are very interested in. It tends to create a lot of buzz. It tends to be progressing and moving forward. No guarantee of success. Plenty of venture-backed companies fail. But it's emerged from the early days, and there seems to be some life inside of this product. There seems to be some life inside of this startup. There's something here that's worth backing with some serious fuel. Venture capital. Between startup and venture capital is the seed stage. This is what we are focused on in this episode. What's happening here? How is this company, how is this startup growing from startup, from the beginning, to venture capital? We know that once it reaches venture capital, it's venture that's going to drive it towards M&A. But what's happening in this stage? Well, what's happening in this stage is you're going from raw imagination and ideation to the initial elements of this ultimate product that you're going to be selling. And to get there, you need cash. And the seed deal is the means by which this cash is invested by investors, seed investors, angel investors, friends and family, anyone who's playing in this stage. The way that they get this capital, this cash, into the startup is by means of a seed deal. Now, we are going to be covering three specific types of seed deals. One seed deal is a sale of preferred shares or preferred stock. Another type of seed deal is the sale of convertible promissory notes. And the third type of seed deal is the sale of SAFEs, which is an acronym, stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity. Sale of preferred shares, sale of convertible promissory notes, sale of SAFEs. Those are the three types of seed deals, and that's what we'll cover in this episode. At the end, you will not only understand what's happening in the seed stage, you will not only understand the three types of deal structures. You'll understand balance sheets, you'll understand cap tables, you'll actually understand the elements of these different types of deal structures, and you'll be well equipped to navigate this critical stage of the game. You don't get to play in the sexiness of venture capital unless you get through the seed stage intact. You don't get to M&A, you don't get to exit or even IPO unless you first get through the seed stage. And today we're going to talk about how to do that.